Hi, humans. This is part 4 of my series of Wendan Tang cases. I want to apologize in advance for using AI art, but I did. So anyway, this is one long case. Before I was going topic by topic, but this is just such a long case. This Dr. Sunny Quay, he liked to hear himself speak, and he wrote really long cases, although sometimes they're very interesting. So let's see this. So this case I got from Gujin An, a Qing Dynasty book of case studies, and it's under swelling and distension. So somebody named Mr. Cha, he tended to have wheezing and panting. So, asthma, shortness of breath, excuse me, that kind of stuff. Every time he had an episode, he took a large decocted prescription containing ma huang and shigao and xingran. We're familiar with those herbs, Shanghanlun type herbs, um, and mixed with fine tea. It was immediately effective, and his wheezing and panting would stop. He had repeated episodes, so he repeatedly took it, not treating the root, obviously. Besides that, he was addicted to wine and he indulged in sensory pleasures. I assume that means sex, among other things, food. He didn't avoid wind and cold. He's just not taking care of himself and he's expecting the medicine to take care of him, and then he can just act however he wants and take the medicine. That doesn't always work out. His abdomen gradually became so large that it looked like an overturned winnowing basket, big and round. Both legs were shiny and swollen like pillars. The inner and outer aspects of his legs had scabby sores that constantly trickled clear fluids. Besides that, he stunk. He had a fishy odor that repelled people. He couldn't lie down to sleep for 5 months because, when you have breathing problems and you lie down, it gets worse. So he had to sleep sitting up, I guess. Doctors were shocked when they saw him and they left without treating him. It's like, I don't have anything I can do for you. Sorry. So Sun Yi Kuei, this Ming Dynasty doctor, arrived and saw him sitting upright on a chair because he can't lie down. He was short of breath and his body was hot. He was also extremely afraid of cold. You would think if you were hot, then you would like cold, but his body was hot, yet he disliked cold. He had 5 fire braziers all around him, so he was really heating up the room. He wore a felt hat on his head and was covered with fur. He was wearing fur all over him. Cloth was bundled around him outside of this. And he even wore a woolen cover on his nose because his nose was cold. Wow, this guy's really cold, yet his body is hot. Sun diagnosed his pulse. It was floating, large, but forceless. He examined his complexion and found hints of green within the white. So, white would be lungs and metal. Remember, he's wheezing and so forth. But green should be liver. Occasionally, green is associated with deficiency. Anyway, Sun asked when the aversion to cold and the body heat began, and the patient said that this started 10 days ago. Sun said, okay, the other doctors don't know what they're doing, but I've got this. This disease is qi deficiency with central fullness. So the greenish is not liver green, maybe, but qi deficiency. And central fullness, he's got the big abdomen that's all swollen. The method should be to warm and supplement the lower origin, which tends to mean the kidneys. People only know how to disinhibit urination. They don't know that when urination is inhibited, it's due to insufficient qi of the lower jiao. So urine can't seep into its original pathway and follow it into the urinary bladder. So disinhibit urination means to promote urination. And so if we disinhibit it hastily, meaning too hastily, it will flood. If we just try to promote urination without warming and supplementing the organs that need to do this job, then the fluids will just flood and flow sideways into the skin and even down into the scrotum. And when it becomes serious, this swelling and distension will rupture the dam, meaning his skin will start bursting open. Remember, he's already oozing sores and stuff like that, but it could also mean his scrotum will crack, like, ah. Anyway, so, the dam will burst and fluids will pour out. So, before we try to disinhibit the water, we have to wait for original chi of the lower jiao to prosper so that it can move things up, move things down, and transform things. Then water will move on its own and distension will disperse without further intervention. In other words, if we strengthen the right aspects of his body, urination will just improve without focusing on the urination. The recent aversion to cold and body heat is due to cold evils on the exterior. So we better get rid of them before we supplement. The burnt spicy feeling in your chest and diaphragm, all that heat stuff, is actually yin abundance obstructing yang. So cold chi forced the fire from deficient yang to move upward. This is like yang floating up because it's so weak that it can't root itself. So now it floats up. So then there feels like there's some heat above. This is not true heat. This is false heat, not true heat. So we should also wait until the lower origin is warm, and then the heat will descend on its own when the kidney chi and kidney yang are strong enough. Then that heat won't just be floating, that yang won't be floating, but it will root itself like it should. So Sun made an herbal formula with Zusuye, Xixin, Chuanghuo, Fang Fang. So you can see herbs that deal with, wind and the lungs and so forth, but not Mahuang and those kind of herbs. Sangju will transform dampness, is somewhat supplementing, move qi. Chen Pi, of course, also regulates qi. Baidoko, the spicy herbs that, like, fragrant herbs that, will transform dampness. Ginseng, Jirgansao, and ginger, fresh ginger. The patient sweated after one packet. And then the patient was able to put out all the 5 braziers he had around him. He wasn't feeling so cold anymore, so he could put out all those braziers. And he removed the cloth around himself, but his nose was still cold like before. So Sun then made a different prescription, 2 liang of Fang Fang and Huangqi. But this time it's not for internal use. He steamed him. He made the boiling decoction and put it under the guy's chair and wrapped him in a blanket so the steam would come and penetrate into his body from the outside. After that, only nausea and vomiting hadn't stopped. So Sun used, now we get to Wendan Tang, ginseng and Wendan Tang, adding some dingxiang. It stopped after one packet. So we're not done though. It's like, okay, Suniko's done a good job. The patient is really, really getting better. But the patient had heard that carp can disinhibit water, which means promote urination. And that is something, if you read, dietary stuff, that is something. But this guy goes to extremes. So he consumed 2 gin of carp in one day. Well, I don't know how much a gin is, but too much in one day. And then the distension became extreme at midnight. So he urgently called for Sun to help him again. And Sun said, what the, what are you doing? With your condition like this, how dare you act as you please? How could an ordinary prescription now clear up the mess that you've made? So he had to think about it for a long time and to figure out, gee, what can I do now? And then he boiled 1 liang of pingwei san, adding 1 liang of ganlan, which is some kind of Chinese olive. It's in Chinese food sometimes. I actually like it. But I don't really know what kind of plant it is. It's not a regular olive, but it's something that in some ways looks similar to it. The patient took it and the condition settled down after 2 doses. Now only the abdominal distension and difficult urination remained, and he still couldn't lie down. So Sun used Fuzi Li Tang, Li Wan only made as a decoction, adding, Sharan, Bukujur, Chishado, and Guixin. So, again, more like fragrant aromatic herbs to transform dampness, and Bukujur, supplements yang, and Chishado promotes urination, if I remember correctly, and then cinnamon bark, to warm and move. The patient took 4 packets in a row, and then his urination was a bit longer. In other words, more urine was coming out. Sun followed with another prescription, Zunzhongwan. I don't know what that is. You could look it up. You could Google it if you want to know. Anyway, so 5 pills per dose, 3 times per day. And after 5 days, the patient's urine flowed freely, and so he could lie down to sleep on his mat because, they didn't have beds the same way we do. So, but the point is, he could lie down now. Okay, so I know, Wendan Tang is not like the main thing in this case, but it's an interesting case and it still involves Wendan Tang. So there it is. Okay.